Okay, so, when we talk about Sharia law, it feels like we're just kind of skimming the surface of a really big and often misunderstood topic.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment for sure.
It affects so many people globally,
It does.
and it has this long history. And in this deep dive, we're going to try to really unpack some of the core concepts.
Okay, that's good.
What are we talking about when we say Sharia law?
Right.
How many people around the world does it actually affect?
Yeah.
And we're going to zoom in on the questions around the treatment of women,
Okay.
using this really interesting conversation we have as our source material today.
Yeah, it's a great conversation.
Yeah, I found it very interesting. So,
It jumps right in
Yeah.
and it talks about the core elements
yeah,
of Sharia law, gives us a sense of just how many people it influences, and then it goes right into some of these really hard questions about the potential for violence against women.
yeah.
It looks at the options available to women within the framework of Sharia law.
Okay.
It addresses the practice of stoning, and even its relevance or lack thereof in Western legal systems.
It's really comprehensive.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of nail down some of the basics
Okay.
based on this conversation. What is Sharia law?
So it's not a simple off-the-shelf legal code.
Right.
It's more like a set of Islamic ethical and legal principles,
Okay.
primarily derived from the Quran,
Mhm.
which is the central religious text of Islam, and the Sunnah, which
Mhm.
refers to the teachings and practices of the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay.
Now, the Quran provides these foundational principles, but the thing is that different schools of thought developed
Over time.
over centuries, and they were influenced by local customs and the political context of where they arose. And so these different schools of thought led to significant variations in how these principles are applied,
Yeah.
particularly in areas like family law and commercial transactions.
Okay, so it's not like one law book.
Right.
It's more like a set of guidelines or principles.
It's a framework for life. It touches on everything from religious rituals to how you do business to...
Yeah, and these principles, they've been interpreted and applied in different ways over time in different regions.
Exactly. The historical and cultural context is absolutely vital
Yeah.
for understanding the diversity we see in how these principles are understood and implemented.
Right, given that broader understanding,
Yeah.
then how many people around the world actually live according to Sharia law or are influenced by it?
Yeah, so it's hard to pin down an exact figure,
I bet.
but it's safe to say a very large number of the global Muslim population, which is over 1 billion people, are guided by Sharia principles.
Okay.
In various aspects of their lives now, the degree to which these principles are actually formally integrated into legal systems
Right.
varies enormously.
Sure.
Some countries have fully embraced Sharia courts for certain legal matters, especially personal status law.
What does that cover?
So that generally refers to family matters,
Got it.
like marriage,
Yeah.
divorce,
Yeah.
child custody, inheritance,
Right.
while other countries may apply Sharia principles more selectively or not at all within their formal legal structure.
Right, so it's a lot of people, but
Yeah.
the actual legal realities on the ground look very different from place to place.
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's turn to a really serious and an often raised concern, and that is the issue of violence against women under Sharia law.
Yeah.
This conversation doesn't shy away from this topic.
No, it doesn't.
What does it tell us about credible evidence of extreme violence?
So there is evidence of extreme violence against women
Okay.
in certain contexts where specific interpretations of Sharia law are applied,
Yeah.
and this sadly includes instances of domestic abuse, honor killings,
Wow.
and the practice of stoning.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, and it's crucial to recognize that these acts are often connected to particular and sometimes very conservative interpretations.
Right.
And they don't represent the entirety of Sharia thought or the lived realities of all Muslim women around the world.
Yeah, that distinction feels really important because I think so often in like the public discourse, the extreme cases really become the dominant narrative.
Right.
But the conversation also shines a light on the options that are available to women
Yes.
within the framework of Sharia law.
Yes.
So what does it tell us about that aspect?
So within the body of Sharia principles, women do possess certain rights and protections.
Okay.
And these can encompass rights pertaining to marriage, contracts, the possibility of seeking divorce under specific circumstances, inheritance,
Okay.
financial support during marriage and after divorce.
Right.
However, the extent and the practical application of these rights
Sure.
can differ significantly,
Okay.
depending on the particular school of thought and the prevailing cultural norms.
Right.
So while some interpretations may place limitations on women's autonomy,
Yeah.
in certain areas, others provide avenues for women to pursue legal remedies
Okay.
and exercise their rights within this religious legal framework.
Okay, so give me an example.
So in some interpretations regarding divorce, women may have fewer unilateral options
Right.
compared to men,
I see.
whereas other interpretations offer more equitable pathways for the dissolution of a marriage.
So it's not a black and white picture
No, it's
where women are just without any recourse.
exactly. And that's a key insight
Right.
from this conversation.
Yeah.
It challenges that overly simplistic portrayal.
Yeah.
It emphasizes that the experiences of women are diverse and that there are interpretations and mechanisms
Yeah.
within Sharia that can offer them some level of agency and protection,
Right.
even if those are often subjects of debate
Sure.
and may fall short of modern human rights standards in some instances.
Okay, let's talk about a particularly harsh practice that often surfaces in discussions about Sharia law, and that is stoning.
Right.
Does this conversation provide any clarity on whether that's still going on?
Yeah, it does address the issue of stoning, and regrettably, it confirms that stoning as a punishment for adultery continues to be a reality in some regions of the world
Wow.
where very strict interpretations of Sharia law are enforced.
Okay.
However, it's also vital to note that this practice is a deeply contentious issue,
Oh, I bet.
even within Muslim communities.
Okay.
Many Islamic scholars and practitioners argue against it.
Yeah.
They point to alternative interpretations of the relevant religious texts,
Okay.
and they emphasize overarching principles of justice and mercy.
So there's disagreement even within the community itself
Yeah, absolutely.
about the appropriateness of that.
Yeah.
It's deeply troubling to know that that's still happening in some places, but let's kind of shift our focus to a different part of the world, and that is Sharia law in Western countries.
Okay.
Specifically the question of, are there any Western nations currently facing legislation to adopt it?
Right. So this is a sensitive area,
Yeah.
and it's often misconstrued.
Yeah.
But the conversation suggests that there isn't credible evidence of any Western countries currently facing serious legislative pushes to adopt Sharia law as their primary legal system. Now, what is more common in some Western countries with sizable Muslim populations?
Okay.
Are these ongoing discussions and debates surrounding the accommodation of certain aspects of Sharia,
Okay.
particularly in the realm of personal status law,
Right.
like marriage and divorce within the existing legal framework?
Okay.
And these discussions often generate significant public debate
Sure.
and raise complex legal and social questions about how to balance religious freedom
Right.
with established secular legal principles.
Okay. So it's more about like navigating how to accommodate certain religious practices within existing legal systems,
That seems to be the case.
as opposed to an active movement to like create a whole parallel system.
That's the more accurate picture
Okay.
that emerges from the discussion. It's about grappling with these complexities of multicultural societies
Yeah.
and seeking to uphold both religious freedoms and the fundamental principles of universal rights.
Yeah. It's a complex issue for sure.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We-
We started with that fundamental understanding of what Sharia law is,
Yes.
this body of Islamic principles, as opposed to like a single legal code.
Right.
We looked at its vast global influence.
Mm.
We addressed these really concerning issues around violence against women in certain contexts.
Yeah.
We explored the rights and options that might exist for women within those frameworks.
Right.
We talked about the continued practice of stoning in some areas.
Yeah.
And then we kind of wrapped up by talking about the situation regarding legislation
Yeah.
in Western countries. And we did all of that through the lens of this really insightful conversation.
We did. And I think what's fascinating is just the sheer complexity.
Yeah.
We uncovered here, it's not a monolithic entity with
Yeah.
a singular application.
Right.
The historical and cultural and interpretive layers
Yeah.
are essential to grasp, as is the understanding that experiences under Sharia law are
Mhm.
incredibly diverse.
Absolutely. And this deep dive has really brought that into focus, the multifaceted nature of Sharia law. The range of perspectives on the treatment of women
Yeah.
within all these interpretations, and then the reality
Yeah.
of its presence in the Western world.
Yeah.
It's clear that understanding this topic requires us to look beyond
It does.
really simplistic generalizations
Yeah.
and engage with the complexity.
Exactly.
So it kind of leaves us with this question.
It does.
Given this wide range of interpretations and applications that we see in legal and cultural systems
Yeah.
all over the world,
Yeah.
how do we thoughtfully navigate this balance between respecting
Yeah.
diverse cultural and religious traditions
Yeah.
while also upholding these universal principles
Yeah.
of human rights and equality?
Yeah, that is the question.
And it's not an easy one to answer,
No, it's not.
but it is one that we need to continue thinking about
It is.
and grappling with.
It is.
So thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And until next time.
See you then.